Okay, it looks like we've had a few more people join the webinar, which is great. Hello to all of you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. Welcome to today's webinar put on by the International Students and Programs Office here at UC San Diego. Just want to let everybody know that this webinar is being recorded. So if you've missed any pieces of information, do know that it is being recorded, and the recording is going to be available at iwebinars.ucsd.edu. Normally in about a week or so after the webinar has been presented, it will be there. So again, this morning, our webinar is going to be focusing on undergraduate student housing at UC San Diego. We're going to be going over on-campus housing as well as off-campus housing options for our newly admitted undergraduate students. My name is Gabi Hoffman, and I am with the International Students and Programs here, otherwise known as ISPO at UC San Diego. We're joined by Stacy Travis and Patia Vu, both of whom work at Housing, Dining, Hospitality at UC San Diego, and they're going to be giving some important information about on-campus housing options this morning. I'm also joined by my colleague, Grace Fuller, also at ISPO, who will be helping answer questions that you might have throughout the presentation. So just briefly, before we get into the presentation, we'll go over the agenda. First, we'll just briefly go over the International Students and Programs Office, who we are, some first steps checklist reminders as well for all of our newly admitted international students. Then we'll go into our presentation on-campus housing options from Housing, Dining, and Hospitality. Then we'll move on to off-campus housing options. We'll also talk a little bit about housing scams, how to be aware of those and protect yourself. And then at the end, we will leave time for question and answer. So we do ask that you ask or keep your questions to the end of the presentation because we are covering a lot of information, but do know that we will leave ample time at the end to answer those questions for you. So it's pretty simple to ask a question. You can see in your control panel, you should have a bar there on your screen that says Q&A. If you want to ask a question, you can go ahead and type it into the box. All of us will see the question. And then at the end of the presentation, we are going to be asking these questions out loud. We won't use any identifiers, your name or anything like that, but we do find that it is beneficial to the group if we ask certain questions that might be applicable to everybody out loud so everyone can benefit from the answer. Okay, so I'm just going to briefly go over the ISPO website if you haven't checked this out already, our first steps checklist, so that you're all aware of how to get started if you haven't started these first steps at UC San Diego. So after you've accepted your admission to UC San Diego, within your application, within your Triton account, you should be given directions to visit the inewstudent.ucsd.edu website. So this portion of the International Students and Programs Office website is a wonderful first stop for you, for international students, to get started on everything you need to do as a new international student. That includes requesting your immigration documents, and it goes through the different steps of what is required, what you need to request. It gives you information on how to prepare for arrival to the United States, including how to apply for your visa, what documents you need to complete, and what you need to do at UCSD before you get here. And then step 3, it will give you information on what to do once you get to UC San Diego. We know that things are in limbo this year. There's a lot of uncertainty with COVID-19. But do know that the information on our site does reflect everything new students still do need to do before they either come to UC San Diego or begin their studies remotely. So all this information is still applicable to you. So we encourage you to go to inewstudent.ucsd.edu to find out more information as soon as possible. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleagues, Stacy and Patia, to begin the presentation on-campus housing.
Hello, everybody. Congratulations, and thank you again for tuning into our little webinar. My name is Pachia Vu, and I've got my colleague here with me, Stacy Travis, and we are both from Housing, Dining, Hospitality, or HDH for short. And we're here to talk to you a little bit about your on-campus housing options. Next slide, please. For our newly admitted freshmen and transfer students who are interested in living on campus, the first step is to make sure you've submitted your housing application. You can do this after you accept your offer to UC San Diego and once you've gained access to your Triton checklist. The deadline to submit your housing application is May 8th for incoming freshmen and June 8th for our incoming transfers. This application lets us know that you're interested in living on campus and allows you to move on to the next step in the process, which is the housing contract process. And that begins on Thursday, June 11th. You'll be asked to fill out a personal history form, electronically sign the housing contract, and submit a $450 housing prepayment. If you'll need assistance with any part of the housing contract process, don't hesitate to reach out to our office at housinginfo@ucsd.edu, and we'd be happy to assist. Now, the deadline to complete the entire housing contract process is June 30, and by doing so, you'll be securing your space on campus for next year. Once you complete the housing contract process, you'll be able to submit your room type preference, any roommate requests, and apply to one of our optional living learning communities or LLCs. Those 3 items are due by July 7th. I know there are lots of dates to remember, but don't worry, we'll be sending you reminders along the way. So we encourage you to continue to check your UC San Diego email regularly from here on out. We're also going to be posting more information on our website, which is hdh.ucsd.edu. Next slide, please. On this slide, we've got our rates off to the right. Your housing costs will depend on the facility type you are assigned, whether that be a residence hall or an apartment, the room type you are assigned, which is single or double, and then the dining plan that you select, the 3570 or the 5355. Incoming freshman housing assignments are going to begin in the residence halls and apartments of the college of their registration, and will continue on to other housing areas if needed. Incoming transfers housing assignments will be at 7th College Apartments. You're going to find out your room assignment in late August. That's also when we're going to ask you to select your dining plan. We'll be emailing you more information about the various dining plan options available to you and our dining program in general in July to help you pick which dining plan is the right one for you. Next slide, please. For our students who may need flexible housing accommodations over the summer, we do have short-term transition housing available. The program is from June 15th through September 5th. Our incoming first-year transfers and incoming first-year freshmen who have accepted their offer of admissions are eligible for this program. The cost is $49 a night per person for a single occupancy bedroom in a shared apartment. There will be weekly custodial services in the common areas, the kitchen, and the bathroom. The application is currently open, and you can find it by visiting the web link listed at the bottom of this slide. Next slide, please. Okay, I know we went over quite a bit of info, but if at any time you have any questions, you're always welcome to reach out to us. I've got our contact information listed here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Pachia, for that information. That was really great. And again, we're going to be leaving time at the end of the presentation for students to ask questions. So if you have any of those now, especially about on-campus housing, make note of those, and then we will address them at the end of the presentation. So now we're going to focus a little bit on off-campus housing resources. We know that many of our first-year students, our transfer students, tend to live on campus, but of course there are those students who also like to live off campus and kind of want to get an idea about what's available in the immediate area around campus. So we're going to go over what the different neighborhoods look like, some of the more common living facilities that are available around the immediate campus area, and give you some tips on what to keep in mind when you're looking for off-campus housing, if that's an option you're looking into. So the first step we let our students know about is that you really need to kind of figure out what you're looking for when you're considering housing off campus. So some basic considerations you want to think about: are you wanting to live in a single room, a double? Are you willing to live in a triple? Looking at the price range, of course, keeping in mind your budget. You'll want to keep that in mind as well. You want to think about who you're rooming with. Is it someone you've met before? Is it a friend you know? Sort of things to think about there. Also, distance from campus and transportation. The area around UC San Diego is served by mass transit, so there's a really good, good bus connections, some shuttle connections as well. But the further you go from campus, you need to consider some of those transportation options. So something to think about when you're looking for housing in and around the area. And you just have to look at each one of these and see how important is each one of these factors to you, and weigh these when you're looking at different housing facilities. The second piece that we advise our students look into is doing your research. So there are a lot of different housing options in La Jolla that we'll cover in this presentation. These are some of the different housing apartment units that I'll cover here: La Jolla International Gardens, La Jolla Crossroads, Regents La Jolla, La Jolla Villas Renaissance, Costa Verde, and Salazzo. There's also housing beyond the immediate La Jolla area that students live in, but we're just going to cover these today. But it's really important that you start doing your research online if you're interested in living off campus, looking at distance, looking at transportation options before you settle on an area. The first resource we want to point you to if you are considering living off campus is UC San Diego's OffCampus Housing webpage. This is a collection of various different housing options that are available off campus. Postings are vetted, are looked at to make sure they are legitimate, but do know that the apartment complexes around UC San Diego, they are not managed by UC San Diego, okay? So these are independent apartments, housing units. So if you're considering renting off campus, you'll be dealing with those entities directly. UCSD does not endorse or recommend any specific housing over another. It really falls to the student to do their research to make sure that the apartment is what you were looking for. It meets your price range and meets your requirements as well. So, but this is a really great place to start because it gives you can see there, you can type in kind of your minimum, maximum budget, how many bedrooms, baths you're looking for, and it can give you an idea about what's available in the immediate area. The other page I want to direct you to is our iStudents page. We actually have a housing section at the ISPO website at istudents.ucsd.edu. If you just hover over the advising button, you'll see there, and under the drop down, you'll see housing, and that'll bring you to this page that goes over various different options on campus, off campus, as well as short-term housing options and homestay options. So sometimes, understandably, if you're looking for housing, especially off campus, and that housing is something you want to look at in person rather than virtually, students will sometimes stay at a hotel or with a homestay family for maybe a week or so when they get here, just to get settled in and take a look at housing in person. And those options are listed here. So if you're interested in doing that before you settle in and find an apartment to commit to, that's definitely something you can look into. This page also gives a lot of great information about what a lease looks like, so what a rental agreement looks like for off-campus housing, tenant rights, so your rights as a renter. It provides resources that direct you to legal advice if you ever run into issues with your contract. We do have on campus, which I'll go over at the end of the presentation, a student legal services office that provides free legal advice to registered UC San Diego students. So if you ever want a contract reviewed, for example, if you're given a contract from an off-campus housing entity that you're not quite sure about, you can always refer to them and they can help you review that for legality and help you with the process if you're interested in doing that. So a lot of great resources to take a look at here. I highly recommend you take a look, bookmark it, so you have something to refer to as you're going through your housing search. Okay, so one popular tool in addition to the off-campus housing site that I just mentioned earlier is Craigslist. Some of you may have heard of this site before, some not. It's been around for quite a long time. It's a very common resource used by students to look for various things, including housing. We do want to bring this up because we know students use this, but just be aware that there are sometimes postings on here that are too good to be true. So if you're looking for an apartment in the area that has a certain rent range, and then you go to Craigslist and find an apartment in the same area that is much, much cheaper, it might be too good to be true. You might need to do some digging and see kind of what's really going on. This site is not really regulated. You need to do a lot of research. It's not managed by any company. So again, postings are by the users and sometimes they're not honest. So you need to really be aware of that when you're searching here. It can be a great resource, but you really have to be sure what you're looking for. And again, if things don't look right, go with that gut feeling. Or if you want something reviewed, you can always go to Student Legal Services if you feel you're getting a contract that maybe isn't fair or doesn't look right. What Craigslist is sometimes good for too is finding not only an apartment, but it can be a roommate as well. Someone else, another student at UCSD, or maybe another local college in the San Diego area is looking for an apartment mate. This might be a good place to start as well. There are various Facebook groups as well at UCSD for students looking for roommates and such too. So this is just one of many sites. Okay, so now we're going to go over some of the neighborhoods around La Jolla, just right around the university, to give you an idea of some of the apartment complexes and different considerations you should make about the apartment complexes. Again, this is not exhaustive. These are not all of the apartment complexes. And again, these are not managed by UC San Diego. These are independent apartment agencies. But we'll give you kind of a general overview of what each neighborhood is like, so you can kind of make your decisions in seeing where you might want to start your search. So La Jolla International Gardens, the benefits of La Jolla International Gardens, this is an apartment complex that's pretty close to campus, only about a mile. It's easy access to grocery stores, the mall, and the movie theater. Very, very easy to walk to. There are great amenities like gym and laundry room available. But there's some considerations to make with La Jolla International Gardens. You might want to look at pricing. It could be a little bit more expensive than others. In particular, there's a requirement for a 2-month down payment. That means, a deposit before you move in. So that's something to consider. Also, thinner walls. This is something that's fairly common in a lot of different apartment complexes and something you might need to adjust to with noise and such. The walls might be a little bit thin, so something to consider there. Next is La Jolla Crossroads. So this is a relatively newer apartment complex. It's a large apartment complex right near the university. The benefits of this complex, there's a lot of storage space. Again, it's close to campus, only about 2.5 miles, served well by public transportation. It's close to the Westfield UTC Mall, which is underwent, I should say, huge renovations. It's a really nice place to be. There's an indoor gym, lots of pools, multiple pools, outdoor areas. Some things to consider, again, is the pricing, because it's newer. It's going to be a little bit more expensive. There are 2 bus routes to and from campus, which is good. It's served well. And again, the issue here, thin walls, just something to be aware of as well. So just to consider those things. The next apartment complex is Regents La Jolla. Again, very close to campus, accessible to nearby bus stops that are regularly served, that serve the university. This complex is pet friendly. We know some students will adopt a pet when they come to the United States, which is great. This is one of those places you can do that and you can have a pet. Typically, if you're going to have a pet, apartment complexes will charge an additional fee, a deposit, for having that pet. So just make sure you investigate what those fees are, you know what they are before getting a pet. Again, they have great amenities, just like the other complexes, a fitness center and pool. Again, pricing is something to consider. They do have some flexibility in terms of their length of leases. They have 3 to 15 month lease terms. So depending on your situation, how long you want to stay there, how short you want to stay there, that's something to consider is with all of these complexes is what the lease terms are and what you're able to commit to. Do know that a lease is a binding contract. So once you sign it, you are obliged to abide by those rules. But again, if you have any questions, you can access our student legal services for those questions. Next is La Jolla Villas of Renaissance. Again, pretty close to campus. Lots of amenities, 6 pools, barbecue pits, a theater, so a lot of outdoor space to make use of, which is great. As you may have guessed already, San Diego has wonderful weather most of the year. So this is a great opportunity to make use of that outdoor space. It's a very accessible leasing office. What's nice here too is that there's a shuttle to and from campus, which is a little bit different from the bus. This is a dedicated shuttle. So this is one that just serves this apartment complex and goes straight to campus, which is pretty convenient. Pricing, again, something to consider. Different apartment styles as well. You might want to consider kind of how many bedrooms you're going to be sharing with apartment mates and such. There are different styles to look at here. So just consider that as you're looking at these options. Next is Costa Verde, very close to campus. We have a lot of students who live at Costa Verde, only about 1.7 miles. Very close to the metro bus stops, which is well connected throughout the San Diego metropolitan area. Good sense of community. Again, we have a lot of students who live here, which is really nice. It's walking distance to food and groceries. There are 2 major grocery stores that are around these apartments. So it's great. You have a lot of options available right to you. Some considerations. There are several floors. This is a large apartment complex and a lot of different residents. So noise might be something you have to think about. Pricing as well. There's a smaller patio. So some of the complexes have, again, large pool areas and different patios. This is a little bit more condensed. There is garage parking. So if you're considering purchasing a car when you're here, that is a nice benefit, something to consider. And again, with all of these, thin walls, just to be aware of. As you can see, that's a running theme through a lot of the apartments here. Okay, and then there's Sollozzo. So this is quite nice because it's very, very close to campus. As you can see, easily walkable. Again, close to the metropolitan bus stop. Great sense of community. A lot of students live here. Accessible leasing office and a pool. And again, proximity to food and groceries. This is what's so nice about the immediate area around UC San Diego. A lot of amenities, easy to get to, do your shopping and so forth when you live in these communities. Pricing is something to consider. Again, the apartment design and layout. Some of these the layouts might be, you know, a little bit different. They might be larger, they might be smaller, just something to look at when you're considering these. There is parking available again. So if you are someone who, you know you're going to get a car maybe in your first or second year, something to consider here. Again, because this is a little bit more condensed, you have a smaller outdoor living area. So if that's important to you, just keep that in mind as well. And finally, we're going to go over the Playmore Terrace University Woods, or in the UTC area. So you'll hear UTC a lot. That's University Town Center. That's just a neighborhood right outside of UC San Diego. This one's a little bit further out from campus, but still only 2.5 miles. Very accessible. Great bus connections from Westfield UTC Mall. And I should say as well, San Diego is in the process of extending its trolley line. So that should be opening soon, a mass extension that takes students from these various different neighborhoods and different parts of San Diego straight into campus. So that is still under construction right now. But as I go over this here in the Westfield Mall, Westfield is going to be one of the stops for the trolley. So this is a great way to get to campus, very, very easy and easily accessible. Again, Plainmore Terrace has a great sense of community. We have a lot of students who live in this area. Just under the considerations here, these apartments are more of a condo style. So some of them will feel, rather than sort of like apartments, they'll feel like maybe sort of larger homes. Some might be upstairs, downstairs, might be near families and things like that. So just something to consider. There's parking available both at on-site and street parking. So again, if you're bringing a car, something to consider. And then of course, pricing. All of these, you just want to take a look at your price range and see what makes the most sense for you. Okay, so kind of going back to our steps of resources and what you should be looking out for with housing. So with all of these different apartment complexes, whether you're considering these or ones outside of the immediate UCSD area, it's really important that you contact the leasing offices and ask questions. I know that can be really hard remotely when you're trying to do this from abroad, but they are going to be your best point of contact if you try to reach out to them over phone or by email. So they can help you answer questions about the complex that you're looking at, different room layouts maybe, what amenities are available. They can go over pricing with you, the availability at the time of interest. Of course, in fall, that's when most of our students are looking for housing. So they can give you an idea of what will be available when, based on the time of year. Again, they can go over the amenities, what they offer, timeline options. So kind of when you might be able to move in based on your situation. They can go over payment plans and options. And again, pets, if you're interested in adopting a pet while you're here, they can go over what their policies are. So it's really important. This is the same, of course, for on-campus housing as well, but be sure to keep in contact with leasing offices, especially around their deadlines for housing applications. You really want to be on top of that to make sure that you don't miss any deadlines for paying deposits and so forth. The fourth step is to evaluate your choices. So some things that you're going to have to deal with regardless that we went over in a lot of these complexes. Thin walls, this is just a lot of the apartment complexes are like this in San Diego. Insects, I mean, it's a reality. Not to say that we are overrun with insects, but it is a reality. You will find them from time to time, so just thinking about that. The management of the apartment agency, are they communicative with you? Do they stay in touch with you? Do they respond well? Those are things that you might have to consider. Sometimes they're not always the most responsive, but sometimes you'll have to deal with that with apartment agencies. And then taking the bus. This is really common. So many of our students take local transportation to get into campus, but it is a reality. Sometimes you might be able to walk, but sometimes you might have to take the bus, depending on how far away your complex is. And some things that could make a difference. Again, the proximity to a bus stop and to campus. Is it convenient for you to get up and easily go to the bus stop and jump on a bus and get to campus? Complex amenities. Does it have the things that you're looking for? Does it have a pool, a gym, things to help you relax? The type of housing, so an apartment or a condo or a house, those are all different things that you want to take a look at and see what suits your style, what makes you feel most comfortable while you're here. And then of course, who you plan on living with. It could be a friend that is also studying at UC San Diego, or it could be a stranger that you found that you're both looking for housing. So just taking a look at your different choices, weighing these different options up, what makes you feel more comfortable, and then seeing how that can help you make a decision about where you want to live on or off campus. I also just briefly wanted to go over commuter resources. So for those of you who, again, are going to be living off campus, whether it's in close proximity to UC San Diego or a little bit further out, there are resources for our commuters. So this is the Facebook page here for commuters at UC San Diego. There's a commuter lounge at UC San Diego and lots of different resources for those students as well. And on their website here, Commuter Resources, you can see they have listed great tips on house hunting, looking for off-campus housing. They give you a list of nearby apartment complexes. They refer to student legal services and then what to know before you sign a lease. So a lot of really great resources that I encourage you to look at if you're considering living off campus, because these are all here to help you as you make your decision. Make sure that you're going about things the right way, meeting deadlines, and also doing so safely. So finally, I just also wanted to go over housing scams. Unfortunately, this is a reality for our students, international or domestic. As I mentioned earlier, when you're looking for housing off campus and you're using some of these external sites like Craigslist or even Facebook postings, you have to look at those postings with a critical eye. Really do your research. Get to know what the costs are for apartments in that area through the rental agency, so you know kind of what a range to expect. If you're finding things that are wildly inexpensive, or if you're being asked by someone to pay a huge deposit on your apartment without seeing it or without having any information about the apartment, it's probably too good to be true. So have a critical eye, do your research. Also, make sure you visit these resources, not only the commuter resources I went over, but ISPO, we have our own page called isafety.ucsd.edu that goes over tips and tricks for how to protect yourself in looking for housing and so forth. There are, unfortunately, like I said, scams that do exist. We don't want to see our students, have their money taken from them. So just be really, really careful when you're searching for housing. Most students have a good experience. They have, they find their housing, they have great roommates, but there are situations where it does happen. So I just want you to be aware. And again, familiarize yourself with your rights and responsibilities as a tenant at UCSD. So we have free, again, student legal services for all registered UC San Diego students. If you go to SLS, studentlegalservices.ucsd.edu, you can contact staff there. Even if you haven't started your classes yet, you're a new student. As long as you're an incoming registered student, you can access those services and ask for assistance. Okay, so now I want to go ahead and open it up for questions. Thank you all for taking your time and listening this morning. If any of you have questions about on-campus or off-campus housing, please feel free to go ahead and ask them in the Q&A box, and we'll go ahead and take some time to answer them for you. Okay, as we wait for those questions to come in, one thing I did want to mention as well is Social Security numbers. This is a big question we get from our students. The requirement for a Social Security number and renting. So for off-campus housing, commonly part of a housing application is the agency will ask you for a Social Security number. As an international student, many of our students do not have Social Security numbers. This is something you can only obtain if you are employed in the United States. So this can be a challenge sometimes for our new students coming here. If you are asked for a Social Security number and you are not able to provide one, ask the agency if there are any options for working around this requirement. You want to make sure that you, of course, can rent, but make sure that sometimes rental agencies will say that, yes, we can work with this as long as you pay a certain amount of money. They can't do that. So you need to make sure if you're having difficulty with this requirement, sometimes it means you might have to pass on that rental agreement and go to another agency that maybe doesn't have as strict a requirement. And you can, again, also go to Student Legal Services if you need assistance with this as well. Okay, we have our first question here, and I might direct this towards Stacy and Pachia, but the question is, Can I still get on-campus housing if I come in the winter, not the fall?
Good morning. And at this time, we're not quite sure what our housing will look like for fall and winter, so we can't necessarily guarantee anyone if you come in the winter that we would have availability. Our wait list for winter quarter will go up usually around November 1st. And at that time, we'll obviously have a better understanding of what campus looks like, but we wouldn't necessarily be able to confirm that we'd be able to house anybody at that point in time. If you are registering for on-campus housing for fall and you can't come, depending on where you're at in the process, you would have an opportunity to cancel your housing contract if you had signed it during our contracting dates that the CHIA provided. You could do it and then get your $450 back as a refund. So that would be up to you to do that in the appropriate time frame that we post on the website.
Great, thank you, Stacy. Any other questions for either on-campus or off-campus housing options? Okay, well, if there aren't any further questions, I know sometimes when you're taking in a lot of information, those questions come later. So we do want to encourage you, if you do have those questions that come up, please feel free to reach out to us at inewstudent@ucsd.edu or visit our site at inewstudent.ucsd.edu. If we don't know the answer to your question, we can easily forward it over to housing and they can respond to you by the information they provided earlier. So again, if you have those questions, feel free to contact us. Otherwise, we thank you for joining us this morning. Again, this has been recorded and will be posted on our site soon, so you can always review it if you need to at a later point. Thank you all, and we look forward to welcoming you this fall. Thanks, everyone.